Okay, everyone. So now that we have succeeded in getting multiple visualizations onto our page, want to kind of I want to sort of zoom out a little bit and think about the actual overall layout of our page. Okay, so we have some experience with how we can implement things like the size of our images and the alignment of our text, but obviously what we have is pretty simple in comparison to what we see on most major news websites. So what I want to highlight at this point is that there's a sort of general system that's used for laying information out on the web that actually is in a way very much inspired by newspaper organization in print editions and has been kind of adapted to the online environment. What this is a grid system. So if I go to the New York Times website, 100%nytimes.com. Okay, and I take a look at the New York Times website, and now I'm going to go to, say, the Wall Street Journal, and let's look at the Washington Post, and maybe BuzzFeed, right? We're going to start to see some things in common, and the main thing that we're going to see in common is that all of these websites utilize what we call a grid system. We call it a grid system. It's really kind of a column system. So what you notice here, it is actually sort of visible in some cases on the page here, as we look at, say, how these articles are laid out. We can actually imagine this as a grid usually of 12 columns. What we're looking at here would probably be 2 columns together. I can't actually do the count off the top of my head here, but typically what we see is either 10 column or 12 column layouts, where very often content will not be confined to a single column, but a column will be 2 or 3, an article, for example, like this will be 2 or 3 columns wide. So it looks like this may actually be a 10 column layout, because if we kind of gauge it here, we can see that this column is roughly twice the size of each of the others on the page, right? So that would make it about a 10 column layout where each story is occupying 2 columns. What this does is it gives us versatility, right? We can have things of different widths. We see how the proportions here flow nicely into the width of the list here. We can have images of different sizes, but they all kind of feel like they fit and flow together. It also is helpful because it makes it easier to make decisions about what should happen when a page gets smaller. Now, what we can see from the New York Times website is that it actually kind of keeps itself centered at a certain point, and then after a certain point doesn't get any smaller. So this is what we would call it's sort of moderately responsive. It probably looks, as you all can tell, it looks very different, for example, on mobile. And the grid system and the column layout helps us with that. So if you notice what just happened here with the Wall Street Journal, you can see that actually this is completely responsive, again, up into a point. So by responsive, we mean it adjusts, the layout adjusts and reorganizes itself based on the width of the window, based on the width of the browser window. Oops, sorry. And actually it looks like the Wall Street Journal one is, yep, once again, oh, nope, is pretty much 100% responsive, right? So what we can see is we're looking at something that almost looks like a mobile view. So what facilitates this, again, is this idea of a grid system that helps the page make decisions about how big things should be and how they should be organized, depending on the width of the window. You'll notice, for example, in the WSJ window that we're looking at, notice that on this top story, there's actually no photo, right? That's not visible at all. And then as we scale down and the page responds, all of a sudden it pops a photo into the top of the story. So this is exactly the kind of thing we're looking for, because, of course, with visualizations, there are more intricate visualizations that might be appropriate if we have more screen space to play with. And in the case of a mobile view or a constricted window, you might want to have it be much smaller. So this is just to demonstrate that these grid systems are in use all over the web, and they are pretty much 100% dominant on news and media websites. And so to bring our work sort of closer in line with the industry, we're going to make use of a CSS, a cascading style sheet library known as Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is actually a CSS library that was developed by Twitter originally, and it is in heavy use all across the internet. They solved a lot of really, I think it was Twitter, pretty sure it was Twitter. They solved a lot of layout problems, and then they made it publicly available. And so we are going to, what Bootstrap does is it provides a framework for exactly that kind of responsive grid that we want to be able to have on our pages. So the first thing that I'm going to do is get Bootstrap onto my page. So if you come to getbootstrap.com, I'm going to click download Bootstrap. I'm actually not going to download anything. So I'm going to use the Bootstrap CDN, which stands for Content Distribution Network. You don't really have to memorize that, but it's a term that you will hear. And I'm only going to worry about the CSS. So Bootstrap actually has a bunch of different components. It has some JavaScript that you can use. It has predetermined themes that will do kind of an entire layout for you. We're just going to get the CSS part of it for now. And as we look ahead, we may work more with some of the JavaScript elements. But again, what I'm interested in here is getting some of our material into a more sort of newsy layout, and also experimenting with exactly the kind of functionality that we saw on the Wall Street Journal website, which is this ability to show actually just different material depending on the size of the window. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this link. I'm going to put it straight into my page, and I'm going to put it below my style sheet. It's not totally irrelevant where it goes, but we're not going to worry too much about its placement just at the moment. So again, I'm going to just tab this in so it's in line with everything. Save this. Now I want to just show you, I will see some effect of my page actually immediately. So just to demonstrate here, I take if we take a look at my links, the way that my links are styled, that's before Bootstrap, and let's see, and we see that actually the style of the links has changed. Now, why has the style of the links changed? Because and it has my header 1 text. Well, that's because there's additional CSS in my page that is influencing that differently. So I can actually see if I choose inspect here. Okay, I'm going to actually be able to see in this right-hand window where the styles that are being applied are coming from, right? So right now I have this heading, it's actually a link, highlighted, and you can see that it's saying, okay, well look, in Bootstrap CSS, it says that the color of links should be this particular color and they shouldn't have an underline. Oh, and there's this other thing where it says the background is transparent. And then here you can see the parts of my own styles that are being applied, because it's showing me that that the file styles.css has this class title, and that is determining the font size, the font style, and the font family there. So we have very, again, handy tools within our Chrome browser where we can actually see kind of in real life, in real time, what is making different parts of our page look different ways. Okay, so now that we have included Bootstrap and we can tell just by looking that it's on our page, we're going to go ahead and explore the grid system that Bootstrap implements. So we'll do this over the course of the next couple of videos. It does take a little bit of time to get your head around. It can be a little unpredictable, and it is going to be important to watch our typos, or watch for typos in determining for example, in how we put together our divs, because the organization and classes that we apply to our divs are going to be sort of the really key thing here. So I'm going to skip down to the grid system, and because this is the documentation that kind of explains how this works. So basically the idea is that when you use the Bootstrap framework, it is conceptually dividing the vertical space of your page into 12 columns. And it has predefined classes, so we'll see what those are in a moment, that you can mix together in order to make the page appear different ways on different devices. Now, the key thing here, which I think is a little bit, which I found a little counterintuitive, is that you're always working in you're always working in 12 columns. So even if we were to put one column inside each other, even if we were to put material inside an existing column, right? So let's say I have this division here, and I want to put something inside that. I would be thinking about it as 12 rows within these 8 rows. 12 columns within this 8 column width. So that's the part of it that can get a little bit tricky. Fortunately, like a lot of the tools we're working with, there are some great existing examples, and we can start with these as a way of kind of exploring how this behaves. So the key thing to begin with is that all of Bootstrap requires that the right inside the body tag, there has to be one div that contains all of your other material, and it needs to have a class of either container or container fluid. If we use container fluid, we're going to get something that looks like what happened on the WSJ site, right? Even on a desktop, if we scale down our window, it's going to keep responding and keep adjusting the placement of our content, down to the smallest size. We saw something slightly different. If we were to use container, we'd see something more like what happened at the New York Times, which is that yes, the material was responsive up to a point, but then at a certain point, our window just started cutting off material. The page stopped responding and said, no, you know what? We have a minimum, this has a minimum width of whatever it was, 750 pixels, and we're not going to scale down beyond that. So for our purposes here, we're going to start with container fluid. Again, we may adjust that later on. But that is going to be the basis of our work. So again, I can skip all of this stuff, right? I'm going to skip past all of my JavaScript, and I need to make sure that right inside my body tag, I have this div class container fluid, and then right before my last body tag, right, I can even leave this script tag in there, it's fine, is going to be my container. So again, I'm going to go ahead and use my format here and just get everything adjusted. Oh, you can see it actually swapped it for me. I put it up above the script tag. Assuming I got it in there actually. Oh, now I'm feeling a little uncertain. Let's go back and check. So there's container fluid, and yep, it looks like I got everything in there. Okay, so with that, we're going to come back in a minute and we're going to start putting our material into these divs and see what happens when we resize the page.